We all grow up listening to music, and so music has this power to really connect with feelings and joy.
You're listening to Beyond the Ballot AZ. I'm Tom Collins, Executive Director of the Arizona Clean Elections Commission.
And I'm Gina Roberts, Voter Education Director. Every other week on Beyond the Ballot AZ, we talk about what's shaping today's conversation in Arizona. What's today's conversation, Tom?
So we're looking at the arts and civic engagement. You and I will talk about music. Music's a big part of many people's everyday conversations. It reflects our feelings, but also challenges us to see things differently.
And music connects with people on an emotional level. I mean, when I meet somebody who's into my favorite bands, anything from Slipknot to Korn, heavy metal, all the way to Mariah Carey and Sync, Leonard Skinner, it's all over the place. So when I hear from somebody that likes the same type of music that I do, I'm so excited to talk to them.
I feel that way unless they're talking about the Doors.
Oh, come on.
But I mean, people of all ages bond over shared songs or bands. So let's talk about how music can be a tool to engage people in civics. We are here with Basilia Angel, the founder and president and CEO of Include Us, which is a national nonprofit that engineers a more inclusive world. Basilia's organization developed the Grita Canta Vota campaign. Basilia, thanks for joining Beyond the Ballot AZ.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored.
So, for our listeners who may not know, can you explain the Grita Canta Vota campaign and your work in Arizona?
Yes, so Grita Canta Vota was in partnership with artists. So the story behind how this campaign came to be is we worked with Los Malandrines, who have access to music. And I'm an engineer, a community engineer. And so we helped design a strategy that was for community with the artist, which is now known as Grita Canta Vota. And the goal of Grita Canta Vota is to empower Latinos to vote using music, culture, to really connect with community and provide the education about what it means, what the power of our vote.
I love, Basilia, how you connect this to showing up to your community, because that's what we see on election day, right? Coming out on election day, going to see the people in your neighborhood, your community, and doing that important act of voting. So I definitely see the connection there.
Yeah, it was definitely a key part of where we went, how we showed up.
Well, yeah, you talked about your idea of this as engineering. When you're thinking through those connections, how do you sort of articulate them between those different facets of the process?
In engineering, we usually define a problem, right? So Latinos are not turning out to vote is the key problem we're trying to solve. And then you understand, you have to ask why. So in engineering, the 5 whys. So figuring out what are those barriers and how to overcome. And so when we're framing it to artists, one of the barriers is they don't even know, they don't hear about it, right? They're not listening to certain things, they're not watching certain things, but we all listen to music. We follow our favorite artists. And so that was overcoming that barrier of like getting in front of Latinos, right? And so when we framed it for artists, that's one way we did it. We also worked with radio stations, like I'm facing, different radio stations to get it in front of. And then in terms of like the events, we also showed up. This was very, so one of our first believers of what we were doing was Arizona Center for Empowerment. And so we did it in partnership. So although I was raised in Arizona, I haven't lived in Arizona for over 9 years. For us, it was very important to connect with local community organizations and really understand what are they facing, what are their barriers, and us being able to plan events and host these large, giving them access to get their message in front of people was very beneficial. It added capacity to them, so then they could focus on what they do best, and we focused on what we did best, which was working with artists, putting on concerts, and being loud.
One of the things that I think that everyone involved in engaging voters and civic engagement and just sort of civic life is struggling with is how to get people out from the bubble they create within their social media sphere. So in that sense, did you think about that in trying to bring people together as a community, trying to break up that isolation that seems to be part of what's affecting sort of all of us in engaging with one another?
Yeah, so we did make the event interactive. So that is something I feel like we try to do that at the event, not necessarily outside, because I mean, there is a component of, we did do digital ads and radio and stuff like that to try to do that. But at the event, it wasn't just a concert. It was very intentional. There was a lot of design that went into it in terms of the messaging that heard before which artist, after which artist, within, throughout which speakers. And then it wasn't just a concert. There was an actual placita. In Arizona, I believe we had like 30 booths. 9 booths had a loteria card. So they would come in, they'd get a backpack so they can get free stuff, have somewhere to put it, and a loteria card. And if they got all stamps, they would be able to submit it for a chance to meet the headliner. At each stamp, there was an educational component. So like they either learned about the environment and like what that means, like how does voting and the environment connects. We also had one where it was like, where is your polling location? And we were like, if you didn't know, we would tell them where it was. Or we also had the lowrider, and then they were also providing, if they needed a ride to the polls, then we would give them a ride to the polls. Not right then and there, but like we would get all this information. So it was designed in a way that they would get quite a bit of information to be ready to vote. As like to make sure that they went out to vote. And so they weren't just on their phones waiting for the artist. They weren't just on that, like they are interacting with people in the community and making connections as well.
I would love a ride to the polls and a lowrider. So that's amazing. You can sign me up next year. Thank you.
Will do. I have to get you connected.
So, Basilia, I was looking at your Instagram account, and so the Grita Canta Vota, and it consistently the message is your voice matters, your voice is important, and I love how you highlight local elections too, because local elections typically have lower turnout. So, what can voters expect from your group with the future of elections?
So we are planning to come out. We'll be at Las Fiestas Patrias in September. We are also planning an event on Halloween. So it's going to be, this time it's called El Verde es Vida. It's another campaign, but Grita Canta Vota is joint. It's a joint event. And El Dia de los Muertos edition, because we want it to be the community trick-or-treating festival. It's going to be at Rancho Corona. And similarly, we're going to be providing information about voting as how we did Votapalooza last year. And so we will also be doing some mailers and things like that. So if you see something that looks like a concert and you see it, it'll have like dates on when to vote, make sure to register on things like that. And that's this year. And then we'll be back next year. Again, probably in a stronger capacity, going at different multiple festivals throughout the year. And then we'll have our Get Out the Vote series in October, November timeframe.
The Clean Elections Commission has its own artist. Avery Zola, our voter education manager, wrote the comic book Captain Activate and the Future Voters.
Throughout history, many art forms have been used for social commentary. Think painting, sculptures, editorial cartoons, books, movies, and comic books. They're all important for many of the same reasons as music. It cuts through the noise and connects with people on an emotional level. Sometimes art that's commenting on a social or political issue can be funny, angry, sad, or just tongue-in-cheek.
The comic book is a resource anyone can use. I'm an adult and I love comics, but it's also the perfect medium for teaching civics to Arizona kids. It's a first-of-its-kind comic book dedicated to youth civic engagement.
Captain Activate and the Future Voters is available now through our website at azcleanelections.gov, and that's also linked in our show notes.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Ballot AZ. I'm Gina Roberts.
And I'm Tom Collins. We'll see you for our next episode.